My husband beat me for refusing to live with his pregnant lover. In the morning he said, "My mother is coming for lunch. Cover all and smile." Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. We love to know how far our stories travel. My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 34. And until last week, I believed in the kind of marriage you defend with both hands and all your breath. Savannah, Georgia, taught me gentle summers and slow rivers. I thought marriage would be like that too, steady, forgiving, and kind. Instead, it learned to clench its fists. It started with a sentence that didn't belong in any home. "Pack a bag. Kara's moving in." He said it like he was moving a chair. Mason, my husband of 6 years, stood in the kitchen doorway with his phone in one hand and a flat stare that used to be warm when we were poor and dreaming. The morning light spilled across the counter. The coffee machine hissed like it knew what was coming. "Kara?" I asked, swallowing the man's name like a stone. "She's pregnant," he said, and some part of me, some stubborn, loyal part, still hoped he would add, "We're helping a friend." But he didn't. He added, "With my child." The room dimmed around the edges. The refrigerator hummed on. The calendar magnet held up our grocery list like a cruel joke. Milk, eggs, lemons, courage. I tried to speak, to shape any word that would stop this, and what came out was small and stupid. "No." Mason's blink was slow. "No? I won't live with your mistress. Not now, not ever." A muscle jumped along his jaw. His phone screen lit. A text from Kara. "Ultrasound today." Mason slid the phone into his pocket. "This is happening, Olivia. My mother's coming for lunch. You're going to cover all and smile." I stared at him. "You brought your mother into this?" "I'm making sure you don't embarrass the family," he said. "We'll handle it with class." Class. He meant silence. I didn't throw a cup. I didn't scream. I did what women do when a bomb lands in the middle of the living room. We stack china, wipe counters, and pretend the floor isn't smoking. My hands moved on habit while my brain tried to rewire itself. Mason had a pregnant lover. He was moving her into our house, and I was supposed to smile for his mother. Would you leave right now? Would you call his boss, his mother, the police? Would you pack quietly and run? Or would you wait one more hour and set the table? I set the table. Because when you've built a life brick by careful brick, walking away feels like burning a city and running through the smoke. Evelyn Reed, my mother-in-law, arrived before noon, wrapped in linen and expensive judgment. She stepped in as if the air owed her money, kissed both my cheeks like we were actresses in a play, and sat at the head of the table without asking. "Olivia," she said, smoothing the table runner I'd ironed at dawn, "you look pale. You mustn't let stress ruin your skin at your age." At your age. I'm 4 years younger than her son. Mason poured her sparkling water as if he were a waiter. "Mother, Kara will be here after her appointment," he said, "and I want everything calm." Evelyn folded her napkin with priestly care. "Good. A child needs stability." My spine turned to glass. A child needs parents who don't lie. Evelyn's eyes traveled the room like a scanner. "Sweetheart, men sometimes make revisions. Families adapt. We will take the proper steps. Announce with grace. Live under one roof until the baby is born." Live under one roof? My voice scraped. "Your son wants his pregnant lover in my guest room." "In your guest room," she corrected gently. "Until decisions are finalized. You'll be dignified and Kara will be manageable. This is how people of standing proceed." "What standing?" I asked. "Mason sells fleets, not kingdoms." Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You'd be wise to measure your tone." I was going to answer, but Mason's phone chimed again. He glanced, then looked at me. "I'm due at the office," he said. "Big day. Boss review. Olivia, keep lunch light." "Light?" I heard myself ask. "Quiche," he said, shrugging into his jacket. And be pleasant. Be pleasant. After he'd detonated our marriage. He left the way guilty men leave. Quickly, loudly, daring you to make a scene. The front door snicked shut. Silence fell over the house, thick as humidity. I fixed quiche I couldn't swallow and set a plate I wouldn't touch. Evelyn talked in measured, floating sentences about optics, about narratives, about how nice it would be for a child to have two women caring for it, and how modern families bend without breaking. She didn't see my fingers shaking on the fork. She saw only the picture frame she wanted to hang. "Evelyn," I said finally, "your son hit me last night." It was quiet after that. Quiet like a street after a crash, when even the birds hold their breath. Evelyn didn't flinch. She didn't rush to me or reach for my hand. She dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin, folded it in half, and placed it on the table. "If you provoke," she said softly, "men sometimes react. You're both under stress. You will not repeat this to anyone." I stood so fast the chair legs screeched across the hardwood. "He struck me because I said no to sharing a house with his mistress. I won't keep that secret for you." "You will," she said, "if you like your life comfortable. Do you enjoy this home, the car, the club? You enjoy those because Mason is rising. He will go further if you simply—" She made a smoothing motion with her hand. "Steady yourself." I looked at this woman who had raised a son that believed a wife is an accessory that adjusts. In that moment, something old in me sat up. Something with my mother's voice and my grandmother's eyes. Something that had been sleeping under duty and fear. I pushed in my chair, wiped my hands on the dish towel, and said, "Lunch is over." "Don't be foolish," Evelyn said. "Don't be cruel," I answered. I took my phone and my keys and I walked out of my own kitchen because sometimes dignity looks like surrender in the moment and victory later. I drove until the Spanish moss thinned and the river shouldered closer. I parked under live oaks and let the car tick while my pulse slowed. I dialed one number. Not my mother, she's gone. Not a friend. Most of them drifted when marriage tightened the map. I called my cousin, Mariah. She answered on the second ring. "Liv? Can you talk?" "Always." I told her the thing I hadn't said out loud to anyone but Evelyn. "He hit me." She didn't ask what I did to cause it. She said, "That's the last time," like a vow you make to a sister over a grave. "Do I leave?" I asked. "You decide. But whatever you decide, we do this safely and smart," she said. "No more rooms you can't control. You hear me?" I heard her. And for the first time in 24 hours, I also heard myself. I went back home with a plan disguised as calm. Evelyn had returned the kitchen to a magazine page. "You've had your drive?" she asked. "Good. We'll present a united front when Kara arrives." "She's not coming here," I said, stacking plates I never served. Evelyn tilted her head. "You think you can stop this?" "No," I said. "I can stop me. I won't be here." She studied me like I was a problem with a solution in the back of the book. "You'll regret leaving." "I'll regret staying," I said. I packed a bag with the speed of a woman who has practiced in her head. 1 pair of jeans, 2 blouses, the small box of photos my mother left me, the blue notebook where I hide old poems. I slid my passport into the side pocket, not because I planned to run far, but because women who keep their documents near their bodies sleep better. I left a note on the counter because I'm the kind of person who leaves notes even when the house is on fire. "Mason, I won't live with your mistress. I won't live with your hands. I'll be safe. Do not come for me." As I reached the door, Evelyn said, "What will you do for money?" Money. The word people use when they've run out of kindness. "I did accounts before I did love," I said. "I'll find work." She smiled a small smile you save for children who announce they're moving to the moon. "Mason's company is the best you'll do." I didn't answer. I walked to the car. I started the engine with shaky hands and a steady decision. I drove to Mariah's tiny apartment above her Pilates studio and climbed the steps with my bag and the knowledge that survival looks messy up close and heroic in hindsight. Mariah opened the door with her arms already out. "You can stay as long as you need," she said. Her apartment smelled like eucalyptus and strong coffee and the kind of safety that's made of air and being believed. That night, I watched the ceiling fan spin shadows while my phone lit up and went dark, lit up and went dark. Mason called, then texted, then called again. The messages came in the order Guilt writes: "Come home. We need to talk. You're overreacting. We can make rules about the arrangement. My mother is disappointed in you. You're making this difficult. Answer your husband. Answer me. Where are you?" I didn't answer. Not yet. In the morning, I ironed a white blouse and put my hair in a low twist because uniforms calm storms. I printed 3 copies of a crisp resume that had been gathering dust behind Mason's framed awards, and I walked into downtown Savannah with a face that said, I knew where I was going. I didn't. But the receptionist at Hale Automotive Group didn't need to know that. Hale Automotive Group, 4 floors of glass and ambition, was where Mason had stacked his ladders. He'd started there 3 years ago as a manager with nice suits and short weekends, and had climbed to director of fleet sales with nicer suits and no weekends. The name on the building belonged to Victor Hale, a man I'd never met but recognized from magazine profiles and charity galas. He had the chin of a billboard and the posture of a career. I intended to walk past and into the temp agency next door. Instead, I caught my reflection in the revolving door. Calm, professional, not the ghost I felt like. And something in me pivoted. Why shouldn't I put my resume in the place that had eaten my marriage for breakfast? Why shouldn't my next step happen under the same roof as his next meeting? I wasn't there to stalk. I was there to reclaim floors. I told the front desk I was dropping a resume for a temporary operations role if anything opened. I meant it. Numbers steady me. I wasn't prepared for the receptionist to glance at the paper and say, "Wait." She made a quiet phone call, listening, nodding. "Mr. Hale can see you," she said. I almost laughed. "Mr. Hale?" "He's between meetings, 5th floor." The elevator jerked, climbed, sighed. The doors opened into a lobby that looked like old money figured out how to be modern. A woman with a headset led me past glass offices and alive plants to a set of tall doors. She smiled the way people smile when they already know how the scene ends. "He's expecting you." I smoothed the front of my blouse, heard my heart in my wrists, and stepped inside. Victor Hale was standing by a window big enough to frame the river. He turned as I entered, and for a heartbeat I didn't see the magazine profile. I saw a man my father would have nodded to at a diner, older than Mason by at least 10 years, silver at the temples, eyes the color of jarred honey. He didn't offer his hand right away. He looked at me the way you look at a person who has walked into the wrong story. Then he said, "Ms. Hart," I said. "Olivia Hart." "Hart," he repeated, as if trying the word in his mouth. "You came to drop a resume." "I did," I said, handing it over. "But if I'm honest, I came to rearrange my life." He looked at the paper for 3 seconds, back at me for 5. "Sit," he said. His voice didn't bark. It invited. I sat. For the first time in 2 days, I exhaled all the way to the bottom of my lungs. He didn't ask about Mason. He asked what I do when numbers don't balance and people lie on spreadsheets. He asked how I handle vendors who shout and vendors who vanish. He asked what I do when a man in power says, "We'll circle back," and never does. I told him the truth. I put the numbers in a light they can't escape. He smiled like a man who'd just solved a minor problem with an elegant tool. "We're bleeding on a few fronts," he said. "Our audit is late. My controller's on leave. There's a vacancy for a short contract. Compliance sweep. Vendor reconciliation. 3 to 4 weeks. Interested?" Interested? The word sat up and raised its hand. Yes, I said. He nodded as if that's what he expected the world to say. We'll have HR print a temporary contract. Can you start today? I hesitated for one practical second. I'm not dressed for... You're dressed for work, he said. If anyone says otherwise, send them to me. He stood to go. I did too. He took one step, paused, and looked at me like a father whose daughter just hit a bruise. His eyes softened, not with pity. Pity is cheap, but with recognition. Is there anything here I need to know before I put you in a room where I expect you to win? The room tilted. I didn't tell him my husband hit me. I didn't tell him about Evelyn or Kara or the note on my counter. I told him the sentence that mattered for the next 3 hours of my life. I can do this job. He studied my face for a heartbeat, then nodded once, as if we had agreed on something larger. Then do it. HR printed a badge with my face and a name I almost didn't recognize, Hart O. And by noon, I was in a glass conference room with a stack of vendor files and a laptop that hummed like it wanted to help. Numbers steadied me. Columns obeyed. Rows told the truth. Within an hour, 3 vendors' Mason's teams signed at premium rates glowed red on my screen. Duplicate invoices, padded miles, signatures that slanted like lies. I documented every misstep with the kind of careful rage that builds bridges instead of burning them. At 2 o'clock, the door opened. The receptionist poked her head in. Mr. Hale asks if you're free to sit in on a review at 2:30. Director of Fleet Sales. Director of Fleet Sales. Mason. I could have said no. I could have hidden. But the woman who walked out of her kitchen yesterday had decided to stop being small. I'm free, I said, my voice calm like a lake that remembers storms. I printed 2 pages, just 2, of clean, irrefutable anomalies. I slid them into a folder. I smoothed the edges. I swallowed the shake in my hands. And at 2:28, I followed the receptionist down the hall past the living plants and the glass doors toward the office at the end, the one with the river in the window and the name on the building over the door. She knocked once and held it open. I stepped inside. Victor glanced up from his desk, clocked the folder in my hands, and gave the slightest nod as if to say, "Good." Then he said to the assistant, "Send him in." The door behind me opened. I didn't turn. I heard the quick confidence of the stride I knew by sound, the clink of a belt buckle, the small exhale men make when they assume the room is theirs. Mr. Hale, Mason said, voice pitched to charm. Appreciate the time. He stopped. Silence, clean, complete, dropped into the room. I turned then. Slowly. Deliberately. Mason's face froze. Because there I was, sitting in his boss's office across from the man who signed his bonuses. Calm, composed, wearing the white blouse of a woman who's done with begging. I set my folder on the corner of the desk without breaking his stare. Good afternoon, I said, my voice steady as a verdict. Shall we begin? I didn't look away from Mason. Not when the door closed behind him. Not when the river flashed behind Victor Hale's shoulder. Not when the second hand on the wall clock clicked once like a trigger. I let silence do what it does best in rooms like this. Strip the noise from men who arrive rehearsed. Ms. Hart, Victor said evenly, please have a seat. I sat. I placed the folder at the corner of his desk with both hands so the pages didn't slide. Mason remained standing for a beat too long, trying to decide whether to claim the chair beside me or the chair angled toward Victor. He chose the chair toward Victor. Of course he did. He angled his body away from me like someone avoiding a draft. Sir, Mason started, voice pitched for performance. I appreciate you seeing me. My numbers are up quarter over quarter, 8.3% on fleet conversions, 11 on regional renewals. I've brought a rollout plan. Victor lifted one hand, half an inch. The plan died on impact. Good, Victor said. Performance matters. So does process. His eyes shifted to me. Ms. Hart, you asked for 5 minutes on an irregularity. 5 minutes. He had given me 5. I would need 4. I slid the top sheet across the desk. 2 items, Mr. Hale, I said. Both confined to fleet vendor activity. Both objective. Mason's jaw ticked. With respect, what is... Victor didn't look at him. You'll have uninterrupted time to respond, Mason, he said. Ms. Hart first. I kept my voice calm. Calm is a scalpel. Item 1. Duplicate invoicing from Palmetto Road Logistics. Vendor.FR 2173. I tapped the dates with my forefinger. 2 invoices submitted 31 days apart for the same 8-vehicle transfer. Identical VINs, identical handover logs, identical mileage recorded on delivery. The second invoice was coded as correction for underbill, but the amounts are identical down to the cent. Both were approved at level F sales. Victor's gaze moved over the page and came back to me, not to Mason. Internal control on that level? Single approver, I said. Who? Director of Fleet Sales. The title landed before the name did. Victor didn't look at Mason, he looked at the math. Item 2, I said, sliding the second page forward. Conflict of interest exposure. Vendor Dark HR 9908, Suncrest Mobility Solutions, newly onboarded in Q1. The contract file shows a referral through Family Partner, handwritten, not the standard RFP channel. The registered agent on Suncrest is one Callie Warner. Victor's eyes didn't change. And Callie Warner is... cousin to Evelyn Reed, I said. Ms. Reed has no official role here, but she has been a frequent invited guest at corporate functions and is known as the mother of Director of Fleet Sales. I didn't look at Mason. I kept my gaze on Victor like a pilot on instruments. Suncrest's first quarter with us shows pricing 10% above the median of like services across our vendor set, paired with 3 unearned expedite fees. The onboarding notes say, approved due to anticipated discretion and speed. There is no accompanying performance metric to justify the premium. Victor's thumb rested against the edge of the page as if testing its weight. Documentation on the relationship? A copy of Suncrest's registration with the Secretary of State, I said, producing the small printout, and a social listing, holiday gala photos, that place Ms. Warner and Ms. Reed together as family. I did not include the social images in your packet. I'm noting their existence and will source properly if you request. Only then did Victor look at Mason. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't a glare. It was the level, steady look of a man who's handled fires and knows where the exits are. Mason, he said, courteous, almost conversational. Walk me through both. Mason leaned back half an inch, then forward, finding his angle. Of course. First Palmetto. They had an internal miscode. They double-submitted, flagged it, and asked for a correction. I approved so their books wouldn't be off. We received a credit the following cycle. You have the credit memo? Victor asked. It's... Mason's eyes flicked, calculating. It's in the feed. Procurement will see it. Answer my question, Victor said without heat. Mason smiled the way men smile at waiters just before they ask for a discount. I don't have it printed, sir. But it's standard. Palmetto is solid. No reason to assume anything else. Victor's eyes returned to me. The credit memo? No credit memo in the ledger or document repository, I said. No reversal entry. I traced bank movement, 2 debits, no offsetting credit. Could it be delayed to the next month? Victor asked. If it is, it's undocumented, I said. Our controls require documentation at the point of discovery. Victor nodded once, a man checking a box on a quiet list. And Suncrest? He asked. Mason clasped his hands. There's no conflict. Family friends are not prohibited. Suncrest is faster, much faster, than the low-cost vendors. We needed rapid turn for a municipal contract. We went with speed. We're in the black. Victor's tone didn't rise. Then you can produce cycle time improvement metrics. Mason spread his hands, salesman's open palms. Victor, sir, my job is to move units and keep clients. I did that. Olivia, Ms. Hart, has been here, what, a day? She's not contexted. This reads like a tidy story, not like operations. If you want, I can bring in my team lead. We'll straighten the paperwork. The numbers are there. I didn't answer. The math was answering for me. Victor pushed his chair back a fraction, the kind of shift that telegraphs nothing and everything. Ms. Hart, what do you need to validate or invalidate both items with finality? Read-only access to Palmetto's statement of account and our AP bank detail for a 90-day window, I said. And for Suncrest, the onboarding communications, any exceptions granted by procurement, and actual cycle time stamps from the fleet management system, not self-reported. Victor nodded. You have it. Mason sat forward. Sir, if we're questioning vendor relationships, we should be comprehensive. Singling out Suncrest because of social proximity feels... Victor didn't raise his voice. We're questioning transactions, not people. If the relationship is clean, the paperwork will prove it. Mason tried a different door. Sir, I wish you'd given me notice before bringing my wife into a performance review. Wife. The word dropped like a coin. For a second, the room felt colder. She's not here as your wife, Victor said. She's a contractor, tasked with controls. Mason laughed softly, a sound of practiced disbelief. With respect, that's a conflict. She has an agenda. I looked at Victor, not at Mason. My agenda is arithmetic. Victor didn't smile. He didn't need to. We'll proceed on facts, he said. Mason, your numbers are up, and I value production. I value it more when it's clean. If there's a credit memo, produce it by end of day. If Suncrest is faster, prove it with system timestamps. Anything less than documentation is noise. Mason's phone lit on the table. He flipped it over face down. A small, nervous motion he intended to look casual. The screen still glowed against the wood like a secret trying to breathe. The name had already flashed across once. Kara. I'd seen the sparkle emoji from across the room. The second buzz came, a longer pulse. A third. Victor's eyes slid to the phone and back to Mason's face. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Men who run large rooms learn to read the small ones. Mason cleared his throat. I'll bring the memos, he said. And I would appreciate boundaries going forward. My personal life is my business. Your personal life is not my business, Victor said. Your approvals are. The clock ticked once. I wrote the time on my legal pad because timestamps matter when people forget what they said. Ms. Hart, Victor said, you'll prepare a brief for me by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Focus on Palmetto and Suncrest. 1 page each, primary exhibits only, footnotes for system paths. At 10, we'll hold a wider audit touchpoint with procurement, AP, and fleet ops. Mason's head snapped. A wider, sir, that's unnecessary escalation. We can... Victor turned his pen between his fingers. We'll look together. If it's clean, you'll have the benefit of clarity in front of stakeholders. If it's not, we'll correct course. Either way, the organization moves forward. Mason pressed his lips into something meant to look like acceptance. His fingers edged toward the phone again, protective. It buzzed in his hand this time. He squeezed once as if he could silence it by will. Victor stood. It wasn't abrupt. It was simply time. We're done for today, he said. Thank you both. I gathered the 2 pages back into my folder, leaving the printouts of the vendor registrations on the desk under Victor's pen. A small, deliberate marker that the facts weren't going anywhere. Mason waited until we reached the hallway to turn toward me. The polite smile fell away so fast it made a sound. What game are you playing? No game, I said. Work. You think this helps you? He asked, voice low. Marching into my boss's office with half-baked stories and... Numbers, I said. Not stories. He stepped closer. The hallway was glass and light and potted plants that had never seen drought. "You don't understand rooms like that," he hissed. "You don't Mr. Dorn?" a voice interrupted. The receptionist from the fifth-floor desk stood 10 feet away, hands folded, a small professional force field. "Mr. Hale asked me to remind you of your 2:35. Mason straightened, smoothed his tie. "I'm on my way." When he left, the receptionist's eyes drifted to me. No pity. Just that same recognition I'd seen in Victor's office. The look women reserve for one another in lobbies and elevators and courthouses. "If you need a quiet space, glass 3 is free," she said. "Coffee's fresh." "Thank you," I said. My voice surprised me by not shaking. I didn't take the coffee. I took the open conference room, shut the door, and breathed through my nose until my hands remembered they belonged to me. Then I spread the vendor list across the table and worked. Work is a raft. It floats when the rest goes under. At 4, I had my skeleton brief. Palmetto's duplicate debit. Trace lacking. Suncrest's overmarket pricing. Missing performance justification. And the registration thread to Callie Warner, which touched Evelyn Reed by blood. I wrote it the way Victor asked. 1 page each, exhibits referenced by system path. I flagged a third item, not for tomorrow, but for after. A pattern of expedite fees across 3 boutique carriers, all coded within Mason's signature threshold. I left at 5:12 with a folder that felt heavier than paper. Downstairs, the Savannah light was gold at the edges. My phone chimed, a text from Mariah. "Mariah, how'd the work thing go? Safe?" Me. "Clean, focused, more tomorrow. I'll be late, need to prep." Mariah, "I'll leave the porch light on, and I'm making pasta. Extra garlic for strength." Me. "Save me some." I crossed the plaza toward the garage. Halfway there, a familiar perfume cut the air, gardenia with a cold note underneath. Evelyn stepped from the shadow of a column like a stage direction. "Olivia," she said, smiling the way people smile in photographs they want printed. "How industrious you looked going in. How industrious you look coming out." I stopped 3 feet away. "What do you need, Evelyn?" She tilted her head. "I came to remind you that stability is a luxury purchased by discretion. You said inflammatory things at lunch. Today, you appeared in a setting where you don't belong and implied ugliness about family. That's untidy." "Untidy is duplicate invoices," I said. "Untidy is a vendor 10% over market because your cousin wants a premium for being related to the mother of a director." Her smile tightened. "Be very careful, dear. Words like because can ruin people. I have friends who build and friends who break. You don't want to learn the difference up close." Behind her, the river glinted like a blade. I thought of Mariah's porch light, and Victor's even tone, and the receptionist's quiet shield, and the way my name looked on the temporary badge. I thought of the way Mason's phone vibrated like a live thing in his hand. "I'm being careful," I said. "I'm documenting." Evelyn took a half step closer, so the gardenia swallowed the air. "You will not say my name in rooms that matter." I didn't raise my voice. "Your name is already in the registrar's database. It's in gala programs and family photos. Facts don't ask for permission." For the first time, her eyes shifted. Tiny, quick, like a twitch she couldn't suppress. It was gone as soon as it came. She smoothed her sleeve. "You'll come home, Olivia. You'll apologize. You'll behave." "No," I said. A car door slammed across the plaza. We both looked. Mason stepped into the light, phone in hand, talking fast. He didn't see us. He saw the text that had just landed. "Kara, doctor says it's a boy. Kara, do you think your mom will want to be in delivery? Kara, should I bring overnight bag to your place tonight?" He stopped mid-stride, thumb hovering. For a heartbeat, the performance stripped off his face like paint in rain. Shock, pure, unpracticed, wrote itself along his mouth and eyes. Not at, "It's a boy," not at "delivery," but at the words "your place tonight." He hadn't thought through that part. The practical geometry of duplicity. Walls, doors, keys. His eyes lifted and found us across the plaza. Found me. Found his mother. He fumbled the smile back on, plaster smooth. "Olivia?" he called, slipping the phone into his pocket like a hot coin. "We should talk." "Tomorrow," I said, and the word was not a promise. Evelyn's chin lifted a millimeter, recalibrating. "We'll see you at the house at 8, she said. "I won't be there," I answered. Her lips parted as if to correct me. I didn't wait for the sentence. I walked to the garage and felt my legs steady with each step on the concrete because sometimes power isn't volume. It's the decision to keep moving in a straight line when other people build mazes. Back at Mariah's, the apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes, and the day turning gentler. She slid a bowl of pasta toward me without asking questions. I ate 3 bites before my appetite returned from wherever it had been hiding. After dinner, I spread my notes on her kitchen table. She wiped the counter and put on tea, and let me talk through the exhibit list until the edges of worry softened into task. At 9, I drafted the one-pagers again, tighter. At 10, I built a simple timeline: invoice date, approval stamp, bank movement. At 11, I wrote 3 questions at the top of tomorrow's pad. Palmetto credit memo, present or absent, Suncrest cycle time delta, system derived or narrative, exception authority, who signed and under what policy. I slid the pen into the spiral. I texted Victor's assistant the concise subject line he would want to see when he woke. Wider audit, 10 hours. Palmetto Suncrest exhibits ready. The reply came faster than I expected, even for someone who runs large rooms. Assistant. Received. Mr. Hale asks that you join at 9:30 for a brief pre-brief. Pre-brief. The man liked his work tidy. I turned off the lamp over Mariah's table. The apartment fell into a kind darkness, not the kind that hides trouble, but the kind that lets your heart slow enough to hear your own name. My phone buzzed once more on the counter. I thought it would be Mason. It wasn't. Unknown number. "You don't know me. I'm Kara. Can we talk? Just us, tomorrow before noon? Please." I stood very still, palm over the screen, the tea cooling beside my hand. Across the city, men were shaping stories they wanted other people to repeat. In the morning, the room with the river would be full. I would bring paper. I would bring timestamps. I would bring my name and set it on the table. "Before we dive deeper next," I whispered into the quiet kitchen, "tell me where you're watching from." And I clicked the phone dark with one thought steadying everything else. At 10 o'clock tomorrow, when the door to the wider audit meeting opened, I would already be inside. The air inside the parking deck felt heavy, a stale mixture of exhaust, damp concrete, and that faint metallic chill that always reminded me of waiting rooms. My heels echoed softly against the cement as I approached my car. The daylight outside was fading, bleeding gold into gray. I had just finished printing the final version of my audit summary, Palmetto, Suncrest, the missing credit memos, and all I wanted was to get home, shut the door, and breathe without measuring my words. But when I reached my car, Evelyn Reed was already there, leaning against the silver sedan like it belonged to her. "Olivia," she said, her tone calm, but the kind of calm that only exists right before a storm. "We need to talk." I stopped a few feet away, gripping my bag tighter. "I have nothing more to say, Evelyn." "Oh, I think you do," she replied smoothly. "Because I saw the list you left on Victor Hale's desk. My cousin's name was on it, Callie Warner. You made it sound unethical." Her eyes didn't blink. They were cold, precise, the same eyes that had watched me serve her lunch while my world collapsed around me. "I didn't make anything sound unethical," I said evenly. "I presented documentation. If there's nothing wrong, the audit will confirm that." Evelyn's smile was small, deliberate. "Do you know what happens to people who make powerful families look corrupt in this city? They stop getting jobs. They stop getting calls back. Suddenly, the world becomes very small. She stepped closer, her perfume, gardenia again, too sweet, too sharp, filling the air between us. I've sat on the board of the Savannah Women's Foundation for 12 years. The president of that foundation is Victor Hale's sister-in-law. I have friends at every club in this city, people who can open doors or close them. Are you threatening me? I asked quietly. Evelyn tilted her head. Oh, Olivia, I'm warning you. You're still young enough to start over somewhere clean. Leave this company, stop chasing ghosts, and move on before you ruin what's left of your reputation. Reputation? I echoed. Your son hit me, Evelyn. You told me to smile and cover all. I think we have different definitions of ruin. Her smile froze. The mask cracked, only for a second, but it was enough. I don't know what fantasy you've built for yourself, she hissed, but you'd be wise to remember who carries this family's name. You were a convenience, Olivia, a placeholder. Don't confuse survival for importance. She straightened her jacket, smoothing the lapel with precise fingers. Walk away from this audit. Withdraw the report tomorrow. You'll be doing yourself a favor. I didn't answer. I simply raised my phone and tapped the screen once, the quiet click of a recording app turning off. Evelyn's eyes flickered toward it, realization flashing across her face. Good night, Mrs. Reed, I said, unlocking my car. She hesitated, trying to recover her poise. You think a little recording can hurt me? She said, her voice sharp. I think truth travels, I replied, and you should be careful what rooms you whisper in. Her lips parted, but I was already in the car, the door shut, her reflection shrinking in the rearview mirror as I pulled away. My hands were trembling against the steering wheel. I drove straight to Mariah's apartment. The porch light was on, just like she promised. When she opened the door, I didn't even have to say anything. She took one look at me and said, "What happened?" "Evelyn," I whispered. "Parking deck." Mariah's jaw set. "I'm calling our locksmith first thing in the morning. No arguments." "I already changed the code on my phone," I said. "But I think we need a backup word. If I ever text you the word cedar, it means call the police. No questions." Mariah nodded. "Cedar. Got it." We ate leftovers in silence, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, just necessary. She kept her hand on mine until the shaking stopped. Later, after she went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table, my laptop open, Victor's documents spread around me. I replayed Evelyn's words in my mind, about clubs, connections, doors that open and close. The arrogance wasn't random, it came from confidence, and confidence comes from protection. What if she wasn't just helping Mason? What if she was protecting something bigger? At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A private number. I hesitated, then answered. "Olivia Hart?" The voice was low, distorted, like someone speaking through a scarf. "Yes. Who is this?" "Doesn't matter," the voice said quickly. "You're looking in the right place, Fleet Division, but you're missing the real account." "What real account?" I asked. "The slush," the caller said. "Look for Fleet Client Retention Fund. It's coded under marketing. Check the transfers from Suncrest Mobility to that line. Every month, same amount. Looks like vendor incentives, but it's not. Follow it." Before I could ask anything else, the line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone. Slush Fund, Fleet Client Retention Fund, marketing code. I opened my laptop and pulled up the company's shared directory, my pulse quickening. After a few clicks, I found it, a buried expense category labeled FCRF, Client Retention Bonus Pool. Last activity, 4 days ago. Transfer amount, $42,500. Source vendor, Suncrest Mobility Solutions. And the authorization line? Director of Fleet Sales, Mason Dorn. I leaned back slowly, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. The pieces were starting to fit together. Evelyn's threats, Mason's desperation, The overbilled invoices, the inflated vendor pricing. I typed a single line in my audit notes. Possible parallel account. Verify slush link between Fleet plus Suncrest. Evelyn involvement likely. Then I saved the file, encrypted it, and emailed a copy to myself and to an external drive I hid under Mariah's couch. I whispered into the quiet room, almost like a prayer. They wanted silence. They're about to get a spotlight. Tomorrow, the meeting at 10 a.m. would change everything. The morning after Evelyn's warning and that anonymous call, I arrived at Hale Automotive before sunrise. The lobby lights were still off, the glass walls tinted gray by dawn. I used my temporary badge to enter the floor and made my way to the conference room overlooking the river. My reflection stared back from the window, hair tied low, collar straight, bruises faintly visible along my jawline like watercolor shadows. I touched them lightly, not out of vanity, but to remind myself what silence costs. The city outside was waking up, soft and slow. I turned on the lamp, opened my laptop, and began tracing transactions. Every transfer tied to the Fleet Client Retention Fund. Numbers are pure when people aren't. They don't lie, they just sit there, waiting for someone to notice. And I noticed everything. The pattern was unmistakable. Every month, Suncrest Mobility wired $42,500 to the Fleet account. Same day, same timestamp, same memo line. Vendor incentive credit. From there, the money was redistributed to 3 internal expense accounts under employee retention, each signed off by Mason. The kicker? None of those accounts had corresponding payroll recipients. No names, no staff IDs, just initials. ER, MD, CW Evelyn Reed, Mason Dorn, Callie Warner. A triangle of greed hidden in plain sight. I built the reconciliation report carefully, cross-referencing bank statements, purchase orders, and vendor histories. Every figure matched perfectly, which in real accounting terms means only one thing. It was designed to. Fraud hides best when it looks tidy. By 8:30, the rest of the office was filling in. Phones began ringing, the smell of coffee drifted through the hall, and the tension of routine returned. I was still typing when a soft knock sounded on the door. "Ms. Hart?" I turned. It was Diane from Human Resources. Polite smile, clipboard in hand, eyes too observant for comfort. "I just wanted to check on you," she said, stepping inside. "You're here early again. You've been putting in a lot of hours." "I'm fine," I replied, maybe too quickly. Her gaze flicked briefly toward the faint marks on my neck. "If you don't mind me saying, it looks like you've had a rough few days." I froze. She set the clipboard down, her tone still gentle. "We have a confidential program for employees dealing with personal issues, safety concerns, family matters, domestic stress. No one here has to face that alone." I wanted to say something easy, that I'd bumped into a cabinet, that I was clumsy, that nothing was wrong. But my throat tightened. Diane didn't press. She reached into her pocket and slid a small cream-colored card across the table. "Resources," she said softly. "You don't have to call today. Just keep it." Her kindness hit harder than any bruise. I nodded once. "Thank you." When she left, I stared at the card for a long time. It said Savannah Safe Haven, 24-hour crisis line. I slipped it into my wallet, between my driver's license and a photo of my late mother. By 9:30, the pre-brief with Victor was ready. I walked to his office, handed over the report, and stood silently as he skimmed. His brow furrowed slightly at the final page. "Clean work," he said finally. "Too clean. Fraud always loves symmetry." He looked up at me. "You sure you want to sit in on the 10 o'clock meeting?" "I'm sure," I said. "Then brace yourself," he replied. "This won't stay inside accounting." At 10 sharp, the meeting began. Procurement, AP, Fleet Ops, and Mason. I kept my voice professional, my eyes neutral. Mason tried to interrupt twice. Victor stopped him both times with a single raised hand. By noon, Mason's smile was gone. The documents spoke for themselves. Every transfer, every duplicate invoice, every inflated payment. He left the room pale, muttering about misunderstandings and clerical issues. Evelyn's name had not yet been spoken, but it was there, pulsing beneath every line of data. When I finally left the building that evening, exhaustion clung to me like fog. I drove home in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other over the spot on my wrist where Mason's grip had left a fading bruise. Mariah wasn't home yet. The apartment was still, lit only by the amber glow from the kitchen. I set down my bag and was about to make tea when someone knocked on the door. 3 soft knocks, hesitant. I frowned. "Who is it?" "Please, it's Kara," a voice said, small and nervous. For a second, I didn't move. The name itself felt like a wound. Mason's lover. The woman he'd wanted me to share my home with. I opened the door slowly. She stood there in a floral dress, clutching her phone and a brown envelope. Her eyes were swollen, not from vanity, from crying. "Can I come in?" she whispered. "Please, I don't have anyone else to talk to." I stepped aside wordlessly. She walked in, glancing around as if afraid someone might appear behind her. She looked younger than I remembered from the photos. Barely 30, maybe less. "I know you hate me," she began, voice trembling. "And you should. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Mason told me you were cold, distant, that your marriage was already over." I said nothing. She wrung her hands. "But he's lying to me too," she continued. "He said he'd leave you once the baby was born. He said his mother supported him. But today I went to his office. He wouldn't see me. Security told me he was in a meeting with you." Her voice cracked. "He looked right at me in the parking lot and pretended not to know me." She handed me the envelope. Inside were printed text messages, screenshots, dates, times, Mason's promises, his threats, even instructions to fake business invoices under her cousin's company name. "I don't care about the money," Kara said, wiping her eyes. "I just want him to stop lying. I thought I knew who he was." I looked at her, really looked. At the fear under her makeup, at the exhaustion that mirrored my own. For the first time, I felt something unexpected. Not hatred, pity. "He's dangerous when cornered," I said quietly. "You need to stay away from him." Her eyes widened. "You think he'd hurt me?" "I know what he's capable of," I answered. "Find somewhere safe. Tonight." Kara nodded slowly, clutching her phone. "I'll go to my sister's in Charleston. I just wanted to give you those before I disappear." She hesitated at the door. "For what it's worth," she whispered, "I think you're the only person he's ever truly feared." When she left, I locked the door, slid the chain across, and sat down on the couch with the envelope in my hands. Inside those screenshots was the missing link, the proof of Mason's fraud, his manipulation, his betrayal. But there was also something else I hadn't expected, evidence that Evelyn Reed knew everything. Tomorrow, I would bring those to Victor. But tonight, I pressed the safe haven card between my fingers and whispered a truth I hadn't said out loud yet. The bruises are fading. The fire is just beginning. By 10 the next morning, the conference room on the 5th floor felt colder than usual. The blinds were half drawn, sunlight slicing across the polished table. Victor Hale sat at the head, his expression unreadable. Around him, procurement, HR, legal, and finance, silent witnesses to what would soon unfold. I sat beside Victor, the audit folder in front of me, each page clipped, numbered, and signed. Mason arrived last, wearing his best suit and the same grin that used to charm rooms into forgiving him. Evelyn followed minutes later, uninvited but determined, her heels sharp against the tile. She took a seat in the back as though she owned the air. Victor didn't waste time on introductions. "We're here to review fleet transactions under Director Dorn's approval," he said. "Ms. Hart, proceed." I opened the file. "Transaction 1, I began. my tone calm and steady. Palmetto Road Logistics. Duplicate invoice dated May 6th and June 6th. Same vehicles, same VINs, same payment amount. $84,200. No reversal, no credit memo. I slid the evidence forward. Victor examined the sheets, his pen tapping lightly. Confirmed, he said. Transaction 2, I continued. Suncrest Mobility Solutions. Repeated monthly transfers of $42,500, labeled as vendor incentive credits, redirected to an internal account, Fleet Client Retention Fund. From there, funds dispersed to 3 identifiers, ER, MD, CW. None correspond to staff or payroll records. The room went still. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Do you have source data? Victor asked. Yes. I passed him the bank trail, signed authorizations, and Kara's screenshots, redacted only to protect her number. Victor's eyes moved line by line, slow and deliberate. Everything aligns, he said finally. Then he turned to Mason. Your explanation? Mason laughed once, sharp, defensive. This is ridiculous. She's twisting numbers. She's my wife, for God's sake. This is a vendetta. Victor didn't flinch. Answer the data, Mason. Mason's mask cracked. Those were operational funds. Everyone does it. Suncrest handled expenses that corporate refused to reimburse. I just simplified the process. By routing money into accounts marked with your initials? Victor asked, his voice low but cutting. And your mother's? Evelyn rose halfway from her chair. Mr. Hale, I must insist. Victor held up his hand. Sit down, Mrs. Reed. This isn't your boardroom. For the first time, Evelyn hesitated. Victor turned back to Mason. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending a full internal investigation. HR will collect your access credentials. You can't do that, Mason snapped, standing. You need me. Fleet runs because of me. Victor's tone was steel. Fleet runs because of structure, and structure survives without anyone who forgets integrity. Evelyn's phone buzzed quietly in her hand. I watched her glance at the caller ID, a board contact she'd clearly summoned for backup. She answered anyway, whispering fast. But after a few seconds, her face drained of color. Whoever was on the other end wasn't taking her side. Victor rose. Meeting adjourned. Mason stared at me, fury trembling just beneath the surface. Evelyn avoided my eyes entirely. As they left, Victor looked down at the folder in front of me and said quietly, Clean work, Ms. Hart. You drew the line. Now let's see who dares cross it. For the first time in months, I felt something steady inside me. Not revenge, not fear, just balance. The kind that comes when truth finally stops whispering and decides to speak. The night after Mason's suspension, I noticed the car first. The same black sedan that had followed me halfway home 2 days before. Parked 2 houses down from Mariah's apartment, engine running, lights off. At first I told myself it was coincidence, but then it appeared again the next evening. Same car, same silence, same shadow in the driver's seat. When I went out to take the trash, it rolled forward 5 feet. Slowly, deliberately. I didn't need proof to know who sent it. Mason had lost control of his job, his image, and the one thing he'd always believed he owned, me. The next morning, I was at the courthouse by 8:30, standing in a quiet hallway that smelled faintly of paper and bleach. The clerk behind the counter asked gently, Are you here to file a protective order? Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. She handed me a form, long, detailed, clinical. I filled in the boxes. Name of respondent, Mason Dorn. Relationship, husband. Nature of threat, repeated following, intimidation, prior physical aggression. When I handed it back, she glanced at the marks still fading near my wrist. You did the right thing, she said softly. By noon, a judge had reviewed my statement and granted a temporary protective order. Mason was to have no contact, in person, by phone, or through any third party. The officer who served him later told me he didn't argue. He just smiled and said, "She's confused. She'll come around." But I wasn't confused. I was finally clear. That night, Mariah cooked dinner and invited our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, a retired nurse who lived alone but had the kind of quiet strength you could lean on. The three of us sat around the table like an unspoken alliance. Mariah said, "Until this is over, you're never coming home alone. I'll pick you up from work." Mrs. Henderson nodded. "And if he shows up here, you call me first, then the police. I've seen worse than men like him." They meant it, every word. They took turns walking me to my car, keeping the porch light on late, leaving casseroles and comfort on the table when words ran out. It wasn't grand. It was grace. The kind you only find in women who've learned the price of endurance. 3 days later, I got a message request on my phone. From Kara. I hesitated, then opened it. "I'm done, Olivia. I've left him. I'm at my sister's in Charleston. He's been calling nonstop, but I blocked him. I'm sending you everything. Screenshots, voice notes, even the folder he made labeled adjustments. You'll know what to do with it." Minutes later, the files arrived. Thousands of words and timestamps. Mason's messages, Evelyn's involvement, invoices, even a voice memo where Mason bragged about moving vendor money before audit day. I stared at the screen until the text blurred. Then I whispered, "Thank you, Kara." Outside, the porch light flickered on. Mariah's voice called from the kitchen, "Tea's ready." And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. I had proof, protection, and people who cared enough to stand in the dark beside me. Tomorrow, Victor would see everything. When the investigation concluded, it took less than 15 minutes for the company board to decide what I had known for weeks. Mason Dorn was finished, terminated for cause, compliance referral to state authorities, full restitution demanded, no dramatic outburst this time, no pleading or excuses, just a single email from HR confirming the decision, CC'd to legal, procurement, and, deliberately, me. Victor Hale called me into his office that same afternoon. The blinds were open. Sunlight spilled across his desk in clean, sharp lines. "It's done," he said simply. "Fleet is being restructured. The auditors found enough irregularities to justify the referral." I nodded, exhaling slowly. "What about Evelyn Reed?" "She'll face her own questions," Victor said. "But the board will handle her quietly. She has connections, but not enough to erase this." For a long moment, we just stood there in the stillness of that office. No victory music, no applause, just quiet accountability. Then Victor said something I didn't expect. "Ms. Hart, your contract ends this week, but I'd like to change that." I looked up. "You built a process that survived corruption," he continued. "I want you to lead internal controls, full-time. The position's yours if you'll take it." My throat tightened. "You don't owe me that, Mr. Hale." He smiled slightly. "I don't offer out of debt. I offer because this company needs people who remember what integrity sounds like." I told him I'd think about it, because first there was another chapter I had to close, the one that still carried my last name. The divorce mediation was held 2 days later in a quiet office downtown. Neutral carpet, neutral lighting. A neutral attorney sitting between two people who had once shared a life. Mason looked smaller somehow. His sharpness dulled, his voice cautious. He wore a plain shirt instead of a suit. He kept his hands folded tightly on the table like someone rehearsing regret. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "Let's just end this with dignity." Dignity. The word tasted like ash. The mediator smiled politely. "We'll go through property division, then discuss any remaining agreements." He talked about assets and accounts, about the house that had once been mine until fire and betrayal stripped it away. Mason kept nodding mechanically. But then came the clause. The one written so neatly you'd almost miss the poison inside it. Both parties agree to confidentiality regarding the events of their marriage, including alleged incidents of domestic conflict. I looked at the mediator. No, I said. Mason's head jerked up. What? I said no. I slid the papers back across the table. You don't get silence as part of your settlement, not anymore. The mediator tried to soften his tone. Mrs. Dorn, confidentiality is standard. Not when it hides violence, I cut in. Not when it tells women like me to bleed quietly so men like him can keep their reputation. Take it out. Mason's jaw clenched. You're making this harder than it has to be. I met his eyes, calm and unshaken. It was never supposed to be easy, Mason. It was supposed to be honest. The mediator hesitated, then drew a line through the paragraph. Removed, he said quietly. For the rest of the meeting, I said little. I didn't need to. The power wasn't in the noise anymore. It was in the clarity. When it ended, I signed my name one last time, Olivia Hart. The name I started with. The name I'd be keeping. That night, I returned to Mariah's apartment, where the air smelled of home-cooked soup and soft music from her old radio. Mrs. Henderson had brought fresh flowers, lilies, bright against the kitchen table. I told them everything, the termination, the mediation, the job offer. Mariah grinned. So what are you going to do? I looked down at the cream-colored business card Victor had given me that afternoon. Director, Internal Controls, Hale Automotive Group. Underneath, handwritten in his steady pen, You earned this. I smiled. I think I'm going to take it. The next morning, I stood outside the glass building again, holding my new ID badge. My reflection stared back, calm, composed, and free. The same woman who once walked out of her burning home and into humiliation had now walked back into her own power. And when the elevator doors closed behind me, I heard Victor's words echo in my mind. You built a process that survived corruption. But what I really built was something far rarer. A life that survived betrayal. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving quietly. I was living loudly, on my own terms. And this time, the only thing I had to cover was my smile. 6 months later, my mornings began quietly. No alarms, no shouting, no fear. Just the steady rhythm of routine. The hum of my coffee machine, the soft creak of the porch swing outside Mariah's apartment, and the golden hush of Savannah mornings that always arrive a little slower than the rest of the world. I still lived there, by choice. The place wasn't grand, but it was peaceful. 2 bedrooms, warm light, a garden that caught rain like a song. Every morning, I'd sit on the porch with a mug of coffee, watching the sun slip through the magnolia trees, and I'd think about how simple dignity looks when you stop trying to impress people who never valued you in the first place. Work was steady, fulfilling. My new office sat on the top floor of Hale Automotive, overlooking the same river that had once reflected Mason's downfall. But now, the name etched on the glass wall outside wasn't his anymore. It read in clean silver letters, Olivia Hart, Director, Internal Controls. Every day, I built something honest, reviewing systems, mentoring young women, reminding them that excellence doesn't need permission. Victor respected boundaries, never once crossing the line between professionalism and kindness. And every so often, when he passed my office, he'd just nod. The kind of nod that says you've earned every inch of this piece. One Thursday afternoon, I received an unexpected message from Evelyn Reed. Subject, lunch, one last conversation. Part of me wanted to delete it, but closure, I've learned, isn't about revenge. It's about choosing peace and meaning it. We met at a quiet restaurant near the river, the same one Mason once took me to for anniversaries that never meant what they should have. Evelyn arrived dressed in beige, her pearls perfectly aligned, her face drawn tighter than I remembered. "Olivia," she said, taking her seat, "you've built quite the reputation. Victor speaks highly of you." I smiled politely. "He values accountability." Evelyn sighed, stirring her tea without drinking it. "You've made enemies in powerful places." "Then I'm in good company," I replied softly. She looked at me for a long time, searching for the woman she once dismissed. But that version of me was gone. "I didn't come here for apologies," I said finally. "And I don't want yours. I came because I needed you to see what surviving looks like." Her expression faltered, just slightly. "You've won, Olivia. Isn't that enough?" "It's not about winning," I said. "It's about ending the story without hate." I paid for my coffee, stood up, and smiled one last time. "Goodbye, Evelyn." When I walked out into the sunlight, I felt lighter than I had in years. That evening, I returned to my office to lock up. The building was quiet, only the soft buzz of lights and the steady hum of the river outside. I paused by the glass wall, tracing my name with my fingertips. Olivia Hart. The same room where Mason once spoke over every voice now bore mine. Not in revenge, in restoration. I turned off the lights, grabbed my bag, and whispered the truth I'd earned. Dignity really is a full-time job.